Alright, it's the next day. I put the epoxy in, put a piece of tape behind it. That holds everything in place. I try to work the bubbles out of there. You don't like to have a bunch of bubbles down in there, but this is where we're at, and I have to do the intake now because the epoxy bubbles out into here a little bit, and I'll have to clean that up. So intake's next. I wanted to show this block that I use and the lines that are in there that I use for reference lines, and that helps me see the shape of the port, that kind of stuff. And it's just my sanding block, and it's an easy reference for port shape. So that's what we're working on. At the intake, all shaped up the way I want it. Epoxy in the floor. Still got to chamfer the edges and stuff. I do all my chamfering all at the same time when I'm finished. So literally what I've done is raised the port, the whole thing. Raised the floor, raised the roof. So I've raised the entire port in the saw. I've also put the other secondary notches in the exhaust port on each side, and I'll be working out the center and reshaping that from here. So that's what I'm working on now. Alright, so at this point I have the port window itself shaped the way I want it. I marked that top edge of the port with a marker. I don't want to remove that while I straighten this port out, because I got a big hump in there to get rid of. And this port's nowhere near finished. I'm just getting my port window where I want it, and we'll move on from there. Alright, like on the 500i, got the exhaust port done. It's not as rough as it looks on those two sides, the side and the bottom there. Just the way the burr cuts and the reflection that I'm getting here. It all looks like that, even though that looks different. But it's that consistency. Port shape's the way I want it. You can see a little bit of my black line in there yet. Intake's done, exhaust is done. Time to do transfers. I put a block in there. Stick it on the saw and set it to my duration that I want. The thickness of the block determines the duration, and I can adjust my duration by putting some masking tape on it. And the block wears down eventually. I cut on it with the wheel, with the cutter, and keep smoothing it up, keep adding a little tape, and after a while I make a new block. But as you can see, the stock transfers are tapered. It opens here first, and then opens there last, and then this is supposed to be a continuation all the way up. is what, you know, steel is trying to do with this. Of course, this is exhaust side over here, which everybody says that the port closest to the intake is the primary transfer. But that's wrong. This is the primary transfer closest to the exhaust. Okay, I grind these flat, and then I put a step up, and then I grind this one. So I do two different transfer durations in the ports, and of course I match the other side to it at the same time, right? So that's how I do that. Look in the exhaust port, that's how much blowdown it has, right? So we'll get onto this. I'll show you the next step in the process. All right, so we got the primaries done to the block. Each side, and do the secondaries. That'll be next. Something I forgot. One of the videos I started mentioning this oil that I used to clean the tool, and like I said, I had been using like a 3-in-1 oil, and I spilled it one day, and that was the end of that. And so I looked around the shop. What do I got? That's a nice light oil, and I don't know what all would work. I think any light oil will work. This happens to be Schaefer's air compressor oil. It's relatively light oil, and works pretty well. I think even like a power steering fluid may work. A very light hydraulic oil, something like that. I think any light oil will work. When I got all these porting tools, they gave me a tube of grease for that, and that tube of grease actually made things worse, not better. It just packed it in there. So tools of choice: right angle, aluminum hog, flat one, and the other one is, you know, bell-shaped, whatever you want to call it here, oval. I use this one to get in to a port that's too small to get the other one started, because I can work this one into the port without taking anything off the opposite side of the port. So those are my tools of choice. Nothing here is cheap. Everything's expensive, but they work. Couldn't tell you how many of these heads I've wore out. Quite a few. And motors. Wore a few of those out. But on to the secondaries, and we'll see you then. Okay, transfers are finished. So intake, exhaust, transfers are all done. So now I want to relieve this area and use my block again. That's when the first transfer opens. And I drop my piston in here. Now the idea here is that that's at the point at which the transfer port first starts to open. It'd be right at that point. So I'll take it down that far, and you gotta keep in mind that as it comes down to open a transfer, it's going to kind of close that, what I put in there, up. But in my mind, I like to open it up to this point, and it seems to work. Now if I had room, I put pencil mark on here through the exhaust port. There's not a lot left to close that port. I don't want to free port it, but let's say I had a taller piston, I had more room there, I could take some off of that piston skirt so that this would stay open longer, and I could raise this up further, but can't do it on this one, right? I mean, I could a little, but it doesn't, you know, 10, 15 thousandths probably really isn't worth taking off, right? So that's the next step, is opening this all up, getting it to breathe, you know, working with what we done for the casework down here with the welding, and getting this whole thing to breathe better. That's the next step. So onward and forward. All right, so I got you guys set up so you can peek over my shoulder here. I put a little blue line in there. That's where the bottom of the piston comes, where just as the chassis ports are opening. So I don't have that block in there. That's out of my way for now. The piston's out of my way for now. Here's a little ridge. I like to take it out when I can. Rather not scratch the piston if I don't have to, but you know, little scratches in the piston caused from doing this kind of stuff isn't really a real big issue. Try not to, but it's not a real big issue. Nothing too technical. Not being too technical with anything here. It's just putting a hole in there. You know, shape of the piston is kind of the same. Bottom of the piston is kind of the same shape as the exhaust port. It's got a curve to it. I match it to that. I don't think that I think that just maximizes what I'm going to get through there. You see the difference? Think that'll flow a little better? How to get you guys here somewhere where we get better light. That's what I'm doing to the lowers. I got chamfer the edges and everything. All the chamfers need to be done on this yet, and then we'll be getting in there. And oh yeah, now is the on this at this point, cylinder wise, is the chamfer the ports, and all this will be done, and then we'll be going back and doing some work on the muffler, bolting the muffler on here and matching the muffler up. So muffler's next. Everything else is done, and till the next one.